welcome you today to Secrets of a Marketing Automation Ninja. And that is going to be a friend of mine who I've met through our work together here at ReachForce and some other things, and that's Steve Susina. And if we go to the next slide, you can see a picture of the two of us that Steve shared when we were both at the Marketo Summit in April. And you can see Steve has all kinds of flair because he's a ninja, and when you're a ninja, they give you flair. So I work as the Chief Lead Accelerator here at ReachForce, and that means basically I drive demand, and then I try to drive demand more, faster, better, basically just like all of us. So what I'm going to talk to is just a quick overview of what ReachForce does, and then sort of get into some of the ways very briefly that those data items can change the nature of your demand programs. And so at ReachForce, there's three main things that we're looking at. And basically the starting point is mastering lead data quality for B2B marketers, which we've been doing for nearly 10 years. And we're driving innovation in digital marketing with a suite under our connected marketing data cloud that will help build quality leads, shorten the buying cycle, and increase revenues. And ultimately, this provides a comprehensive view again across all of your leads, whether it's inbound events, marketing automation, or sales automation. And I'd like to ask everybody a question, especially as we're all kind of wandering in. I love polls. And so I'm going to ask you this one. And if everybody could just weigh in with your answer, it helps all of us to understand, you know, who's here. Are there people who've done this before, haven't done this before? You know, what are the most important things that we should be talking about while we're in the webinar today? So if you can all answer that, I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes, not minutes, a couple more seconds. And okay, so it looks like that's a good, oh, we've got some more voting. You guys are doing good. Think it over. I don't know if it'll let you change your vote. This happened to me the other day. It's kind of annoying. All right, that looks like a good one. Okay, so what we're seeing is that amongst you all, 46% have in fact cleaned your data in the last 12 months. You are going to especially enjoy when we get to the ninja moves because you will be ready to make them. And the others of you that have been a little bit longer since you've done it, the next biggest bubble in the cleaned department is within the last 12 to 24 months. So, you know, as we kind of walk through what some of this means, it's going to really hit home, I think, how important it is that we all do this. And it's the kind of thing, just like, you know, maintaining the paint on your house, that you might put off longer than you should. So if we go to the next slide, this was one of those quotes that, you know, those of us in marketing absolutely love because you can just pop it right into your slide. Plan and budget for data hygiene next year, the date's even right, or lose your job. And this is really not a trivial point. And the reason is that when we look at the incredible results that we hear through marketing automation, and, you know, for those of us who are not slaying it like Steve is with his programs yet, I will tell you that the biggest, most impressive program gains through marketing automation that I have heard, and those people that go up and take the big trophies at the conferences, are the people who have great data, build very targeted, segmented tracks to nurture very specific groups of people all the way to a closed one. And so when we talk about how come data becomes inaccurate, well, in marketing, it's because we're very busy. We're actually bringing in a lot of lead activity. And if we're bringing in lead activity through an event, then, you know, somebody has filled out their form and maybe they filled it out a little differently than what we already had on file. Maybe we get a duplication. Or my favorite, and I'm sure all of you have experienced this, is the sales guy duplication, because he made a copy of the list and he uploaded it to Salesforce because he wants to work it right now, which of course totally kills our campaign attribution and duplicates our records, and then we can't even see which programs are working. So this all goes towards, you know, planning for revenue through marketing activity, cohesion, and the other piece of how this goes wrong is people change jobs. And when people change jobs, that means that your records are inaccurate. And when you're sending out to a bad database, it's going to hurt your email deliverability, which is a whole nother thing and a topic that we have as a webinar you can watch. But there's some very big reasons. And so basically the wraparound here is, and we can go to our industry experts to kind of validate some of this. If you don't have good data quality, and if you haven't cleaned your database or enriched it, you don't have good data quality in B2B marketing, it is going to really depress what you're able to achieve. So if, for example, you're amongst the 27% of people who took our poll who haven't yet cleaned their data but are planning to, I will tell you that even if you are running great programs, you will be blown away by what you are able to accomplish once you have that complete data. And I'm not speaking, I do try to make sure to speak around this as a marketer, not as a sales vendor or vector for my company, because I'm you and I have the same challenges. And so I'm always looking to figure out how to improve our programs here at ReachForce. And so one of the things that we have is a tool a solution called Smart Forms that adds data to leads as they come in through your website. And so if I can just take a minute, I've got one other poll, and I just want to get a sense of, how many people are using content marketing or inbound marketing and driving leads through your website, and sort of what's the average volume that everyone's dealing with. Because one of the things that we do at ReachForce is we do a lot of case study investigations, which is how Steve and I met, and how I learned about all of his incredible moves. In fact, I swore him to secrecy. He was not allowed to tell anybody how he did this until he let me know first so I could try it. And I did not come close to what Steve did because I didn't have the same level of data foundation actually that he did, because I was saving my database for applying one of our new solutions, which we just completed. And anyway, so I looked at all this, and it's incredible what a difference it will make to your programs. So I'm going to give everybody just a couple more seconds. And sorry, but I was talking about the case study. So we've done a case study with someone who's using data appending on their inbound leads, and the things that have changed in the buying cycle, the marketing nurture toward buying cycle, are just unbelievable. I mean, I would say they're unbelievable, except we actually reported a case study. So I'm going to close this poll and go back to our presentation and jump into, what are some of these things mean when we've got data and what can you achieve? And referencing this case study, our customer is a company that maybe a lot of people in the Marketo side of the world know. It's LeadMD and Justin Gray, who's the CEO there. And he is unbelievably methodical about tracking his entire marketing funnel, as well he should be, since he's a leader in guiding others how to do better marketing. And so if we go to the next slide, you'll see sort of the difference between what happens with the right data combined with the right marketing approach. And so the top of the slide in the gray here, you see your leads are coming in to your marketing programs, whether it's events or your website or, lists that you've acquired through swaps or, the whole multitude of ways that we bring things in. Typically, you're going to have, a limited amount of data around each of those names. And what you don't have that you need for marketing is something you need to fill in with a question or data, because that field is empty. And so what ends up happening is a lot of this is pursued through our nurture programs. Email nurture, we want to drive someone to a web page where when they fill it out, we are able to capture a couple more pieces of the puzzle. So we get those pieces of the puzzle, and then we continue to nurture them till they become interested in our product. Hopefully, we hand them off to sales. However, what we discovered with our LeadMD case study was that when the company added data at the very beginning of the process, they were able to literally eliminate a whole bunch of those formerly mandatory questions and replace them with other questions. And so there were double-digit gains in the number of leads that were generated at each step of the marketing funnel. There was also huge time advantage that was gained. So in that case study, which is on our website, they went from 40 weeks to drop people into a persona-driven nurture track, which is hard to say, to 15 weeks which cut 6 months off nurture. And they knew that once they dropped people into a persona-driven track, that they would be sales ready so much faster. And ultimately, the overall process of adding this data and using it throughout their marketing automation program, and these are people who really know what they're doing, obviously, it added $1 million in projected revenue off, and I think it was 104x ROI on the solution. So this is simply to illustrate how incredible data can be to your programs, and also how foundationally important it is. And the great thing is that I kind of focus marketing around two issues: fear and greed. And with Steve, Steve's going to show you, like, if you're greedy for better results, then he's totally going to show you some tricks, especially if you're a Marketo user, because they're very specific to the Marketo system. But the concepts can be applied in almost any version of marketing automation. And so as we go to the last slide for me, so I can get ready for our ninja to appear, and he's probably blushing right now because he's actually really humble. You'll see that through on the data quality impact on the sales pipeline, there's a little bit more here in terms, it walks you through the different highlights, what's wrong if you don't have amended data, and what's right if you improve the data quality. I'm not sure if Steve's out, so I think he's going to float you all the way through this. So, the things that are problems is you can't target well. If you can't target well, then you're going to be doing some irrelevant types of messaging. And when you can target well, maybe you're improving the collection of data on the front end that allows you to do better targeting and segmentation. The more targeted your message is around the person, their industry, their personality, their psychology, their buying cycle, whatever those things are, you're going to see just continuous lift in your program. And when you basically bake in the compounding effect of all these program gains, you are going to see dramatically different measurable improvements in your program. So having said that, I think for me, it makes the perfect introduction to Steve Susina, and who is our, I have named him a marketing automation ninja. And not that he's the only one. They're secretive though. So unless you've met one, you might not know that you're in the presence of a ninja. And I think that the thing for me that really has always impressed me when I talk to Steve is the specifics, the approach, the creativity, and he actually is a real believer in data quality. And then he's used it to build these incredible programs that can especially help you out in a pinch when you really need to drive some activity very quickly. So at this point, I'm delighted to hand this to Steve Susina, who I believe has some breaking news for us today. And so Steve won a Revy Award at the Marketo Summit in April this year for the programs that he created using the addition of all this great data quality and his ninja-like marketing automation skills. And he did those while the Director of Demand Generation Services for Crane Communications Business Insurance Magazine. And I will let Steve tell you an update in our breaking news today. Now, Steve is talking. Steve is muted. So I'm going to ask Steve to start talking, or else my program here is very, very quiet, and I don't know why. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if you can hear Steve, because maybe it's just me. So can't see the results. The sound cut off. Yes, it sure did. Steve, I don't know why. Wait, the results. I will post the results afterwards. I am not hearing Steve. Are other people hearing Steve? Wow. Okay, so 55 of you are here. Is there still was there an audio problem with me? I'm not seeing your comments, chat. Sorry, guys. Well, I'm not hearing Steve, which is a real problem since I'm the one who is recording this. And let's see here. Sorry, we're having a little technical difficulty. If everybody can just pause for a second. Is that, I think I heard Steve jump back on. Steve, is that you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I don't know what it is, but Steve is in a secret location, and clearly it is a place that they want phone service to not function. So thank you, Steve. We can hear you now. If you have any issues, we will. I see that the sound.
Well, you know, us ninjas, we like to operate in stealth mode. So.
Exactly, exactly. Well, let's be a little bit less stealthy.
Do a
yeah.
World's first webinar with no audio.
I think I've had that before. Again, unintentional. But Steve, what is
that
this?
Probably wouldn't be. Wouldn't be what people want to hear today, though. So
no. But I see you.
To be on the. I'm sorry.
Oh, I keep interrupting you. I'm just handing it over to you now. I'm so delighted to hear you.
Yes, thank you. And it's great to be online. And as Mary alluded, when we set these webinars up, we wanted to make the data requirements for keeping track of your data and keeping it accurate and representing the changes that take place very accurate. So between the time we set this webinar up and today, I have moved to a new position. So as Mary introduced me, the information you're about to hear was done while I was at Crane Communications and Business Insurance. I'm about to start a new endeavor on an e-commerce consulting firm, but taking that same demand generation and marketing automation approach. So some of the ideas that you'll hear today, I'll be implementing myself as we move forward. The other thing that I think it's important to note is, and again, Mary mentioned this, but I did this on the Marketo platform. But if you're a demand generator or you're a marketing automator, these will apply regardless of the system. There might be some differences in how it's actually implemented in your system, but all major marketing automation systems are capable of achieving the types of programs, doing the types of things that that we accomplished, and you'll be able to take that and move that forward. So with that as our introduction, I'll talk a little bit about the need for the program that we put in place. So Crane Communications is a publisher of trade publications and business publications, and they range across a wide array of topics ranging from business to healthcare to marketing, manufacturing, financial services. Regardless of the publication, the publishing world overall faces a number of industry trends. Marketers have seen budgets for overall programs decline, and especially with respect to advertising. The print advertising is getting a smaller proportion of the overall mix. There's been this emergence of content marketing and a shift to mobile devices. So all of these overall trends have not been providing a tailwind to the publishing world. The publishing world, like many other businesses, still has a viable role in educating the business customers, but we needed to find new ways to be able to reach customers, to be able to put programs together to help engage our readers with both advertisers and people who are sponsoring different elements of content, and those readers themselves. And one of the ways that we chose to attack that is with marketing automation, and specifically the Marketo platform. So there was a viable role as an organization. There was a need to do some things differently because the rest of the marketing world had shifted, but there was still that valued service, providing that news and information and linking providers and customers and purchasers and others that are interested in the field and bringing them together. So if we look at a simple overview of how we use marketing automation in the publishing world, the first aspect is traditional demand generation services supporting our advertising sales. So if you're a marketer, you may have engaged with a publication in your industry for lead generation programs or other type of demand generation programs. And the Marketo platform and marketing automation in general gives us a great opportunity to leverage our database and to be able to put programs together for syndicated content downloads, be it white papers or case studies, to streamline the process of things like offering webinars and other registrations, live events, lunch and learns, all sorts of opportunities to register people, and also create new forms of interactive and digital advertising that leverage the combination of both data and interactivity through the website. So demand generation programs is the first. Second is our audience development efforts. As a publication, we obviously need to continue to grow the readership, gain renewals, find ways to connect subscribers with the publication, as well as to register people for online access to the website. There's a tiered registration model where if you came to some of our websites, you're able to get some information simply by visiting, but it's very limited. If you were able to share some data on your profile, you got more access, a certain number of articles a week. And if you were a paid subscriber, you had a much wider access, virtually unlimited access to all of the information on the website. And then finally, we wanted a technology platform to support demand generation services for ourselves. So being able to go in and work with people, understand who the buyers are for our particular products and services, create campaigns, and engage them in that way. So three platforms, or three sales elements for demand generation and marketing automation. All three of them were critical to our application. And all three provide for good examples on the use of data and what we'll share for the remainder of the presentation. Now, one of the proof points as to has this really helped, because marketing automation is a big investment. It's an investment in both the cost of the software itself, and nobody's platform is cheap. They're all requiring a sizable investment in the software itself. But then the challenge is getting people trained and going through that learning curve and executing it. And the question comes up, is that investment worth it? Can we go in and show improved results from deploying something like a Marketo or other marketing automation platform? And there's the picture again with Mary and the award. This was the Marketo Revenue Performance Award from earlier this year for Most Dramatic Business Impact. And what you'll find is that for an industry that has been somewhat slow in the past to adopt to marketing innovations, we took this Marketo platform, deployed it across our site, and saw tremendous increases in the number of people registering on our site for online newsletters, the number of people that have registered for events that we've leveraged the platform for, directly led to a significant amount of new advertising revenue, number of new customers and new types of programs. And even the print subscribers, which had been declining for a number of years, showed an increase. So all of the trends started to look up and point in the right direction for leveraging this type of program. Now, I'll pause there for a minute and shift direction a bit, because we've talked so far about the type of marketing automation, the type of marketing that we use at Crane. But I think there's a more fundamental issue, and that's getting to the understanding of how businesses used to sell to their customers, which was to buy or rent lists, sort them based on the region or sales rep, assign them to an individual, have reps sit in big rooms and spend the bulk of their day cold calling, hoping they could get somebody interested in a particular product or service, and if all goes well, profit. And of course, we hope that there was also some support by brand advertising and obviously public relations and other of the traditional marketing services. And what we're finding today is that there is a much more dynamic approach in here. And the way I like to compare this to is this whole approach of lead generation, lead nurturing, supported by automation, compared to the show The Deadliest Catch. And I think a lot of people are familiar with that and have watched that. And you have these crab boats that go out there and collect large amounts of crab. And we can essentially say this is lead generation. We're going out there, we're identifying prospects. They're generally in the right area that we're looking for. But we know that not every lead that we generate is going to be a right fit for our audience. So then we move into lead scoring and lead nurturing, which is basically sorting through all of that crab and trying to find those that we're going to keep and nurture, and those that we're going to throw back and recycle and see if we can catch them again another day when they're a better line prospect. So that type of comparison, if you think about lead nurturing and lead generation in these terms, we're trying to scoop up as many leads as we can with high-level, top-of-the-funnel lead generation programs, and then we're trying to sort out and nurture and qualify as we move down the funnel, just like the crabbers on The Deadliest Catch used to do. Bring a bunch in, sort them out, keep the ones that you're going to work, and let the rest go. So if we look at an example of a typical program, an example would be trying to scoop up leads, and this was for a webinar that we did, and we generated nearly 1,200 leads into a campaign, and these were generated based on webinar attendees and white paper downloads, people that had expressed some interest in a particular topic, and there's a certain level of self-qualification in that. So people that are not interested in the topic at all probably wouldn't register for the webinar, probably wouldn't download the white paper. There's always going to be a few that come into those programs that aren't fully qualified. But that's the next stage, which is to run nurturing programs to identify those marketing qualified leads out of that large scoop that we had. So if we think about that top line as everything we brought in those big cages, the next level is how many are left after we've sorted through and run them through a nurturing campaign.
Hey, Steve.
And yes.
So I remember seeing you do this in Chicago a couple months ago, and I remember my head kind of exploded a little bit, and I needed to just kind of linger and just sort of walk through it with you. And the thing that I find so compelling here is that, a lot of us get marketing automation. This is a takeaway that I've been finding recently, that the marketing automation companies do a fantastic job of selling it to the CEO, that this is going to, or the chief sales guy, this is going to massively increase your lead flow, right? But in order to do that, there has to be a massive increase in marketing activity, which takes time, talent, and sometimes money. And, in looking at this, the thing I loved about it when we drilled through it was, ultimately we're not talking about, taking 1,000 raw leads and turning them into 1,000 sales qualified leads, because there's still a time process to this, and there's also a need and the budget on behalf of the prospect. But what I loved about it was, you're investing $50,000 in doing something, and it drove one big deal at the time you closed out the analysis of this. And so it really, a lot of this has a lot to do with what kind of pipeline you have, what kind of product you have. But the metrics are so critical. And the thing I love about this whole thing is how detailed the analysis against the campaign is, because, Steve was actually, I believe you were doing this for a paying client of the magazine. Is that correct?
Yes, this was an advertising client. We ran the program on their behalf, and it was an end-to-end campaign. Their goal was to get them a number of qualified leads. Obviously, their sales team had to take it over at that marketing qualified level. But even then, there wasn't an expectation or an actual result that 100% of the marketing qualified leads would wind up being sales accepted. We worked on as all marketers should, to have a handoff point and to have a common definition of what represents a marketing qualified lead. How do we know based on either company type, demographics, a lead score, a set of behavioral characteristics. When do they want that lead handed to them to start working?
Right.
And even after that point, they're the ultimate arbiters of what is truly qualified. So out of the 102, nearly 3/4 were filtered out. They were either existing customers that were responding to a marketing campaign. They wound up being too large or too small for the particular campaign. But they found 25 that were very well qualified to move through that particular process. And the interesting thing is that if you don't have something like a marketing automation program and a thought-out program on how you're going to match content and bring people through the funnel, you wind up with trying to find that one sale out of 1,100, 1,200 potential prospects. And the chances are, without having a systemic way to get through that, you lose out on that opportunity to find the one, because invariably nobody wants to go through 1,179 dead ends to find that one customer who's going to work through the process and essentially pay for the entire campaign and then some.
Yeah, and when you look at that, you think about the idea of cold calling, right? Because a lot of people in our trade get, we encounter people that are really committed to the idea of, teleprospecting a raw list rather than kind of jumping in at a point where they're somewhat through the nurture. And it's all philosophical, but this literally would mean calling, almost 1,200 people who hadn't been walked through some of the nurturing that your program achieved to find that one deal that's going to be worth $2 million. I can't even imagine what the cost would be to just make cold calls to 1,180 people, and probably wouldn't have yielded any of this, right?
Yeah, and when you map through the fact that it's not just 1,100, 1,200 calls, it's probably 6 to 8 dials per individual to get them to the point where you've reached them at a point where they've answered.
Yeah, well, let's keep going, and I'll just step out, but I love the detail, and it's really important to think about the funnel. It really filters a lot out.
Yeah, the other interesting aspect is being able to look at the nurturing effect on the engagement. So this was a slightly different campaign, but the idea here was not to look at numbers of leads as they progress through the funnel, but to look at how engaged people become as they work their way through the funnel. So when we take a nurturing program where we're going to drip successive marketing offers, be it article reprints or webinar invitations or white paper downloads to a audience, when we're trying to acquire that top of the funnel, our expectations in terms of open rates and click-through rates are going to be at one level, and we're going to put out a large number of emails and newsletters and page views on our website to try and get people to engage initially. But once we have that information in hand, we can go in and see that the late-stage nurturing campaign elements have a significantly higher open rate and a significantly higher click-through rate with a much smaller number of messages that we have to actually deliver. So the better we are at bringing people through that marketing funnel through well-targeted and well-designed nurturing programs, we're going to see much higher campaign engagement. And you see here we had nearly 1,200% increase in the click-through rate and a 250% increase in email open rate. Now, I know people will set aside email open rates as not being 100% accurate, and there is some truth to that. However, dealing with a consistent list, we know over time what our audience is going to deliver with our list and our email marketing programs in an open rate.
Steve, I have a quick question.
To your programs.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I get asked this question a lot around benchmarks, right? So what benchmark should I be aiming for if I'm running effective marketing automation? And I know that some of the late stage nurture stuff I've heard, someone I need to get her to do a webinar because her numbers are amazing. Some could be 30-40% open rate and a 30% click through. When we're looking at your numbers, I mean, I think we all understand open rate. So that's your open rate of your delivered email, correct?
Correct, correct.
And then the click-through rate, is that the click to open rate or is that the click to delivered rate?
That's the number that clicked on the call to action in the particular ad of the total audience that was sent.
Okay, so not the people who opened the email and then clicked.
Well, there's an assumption that everyone who clicked.
Well, yeah. No, sorry. There's a click to, if you in your Marketo stats, at least there is a way to see your click to open rate, which is always going to be a lot higher. So okay,
this is of the overall audience.
That's
so
cool.
The 34% open rate is 34% of that 4585 on the right-hand column, and the 12.9% is the 12.9% of the 4585.
Perfect.
Not the people that actually opened. So that last number would be significantly higher because it's a much smaller. Instead of 4,500, it would be 1,500, and it's a fixed number of people that clicked. So, but the main point is, as you work your way deeper into these nurturing programs, you can anticipate and you can expect that the performance of those campaigns will improve deeper into the program.
I'm gonna, Steve. Sorry, did I mute myself? No, I didn't yet. Hey, I got a really good question, and I want to thank the person who asked this. And basically, what he's saying is, by nurture campaigns, do you mean an email drip campaign? And I will say yes. And what do you include in these campaigns, and how many messages do you send over time? Because I've been including webinar recordings, ebooks, and blog articles in my drip campaigns, but don't get close to these results. So I did tell you that Steve is a ninja. He's also working with good data. But Steve, what would you say you're including in that? And then we'll come back to some other, we can get into some of the details at the end, or do that as a blog post.
Yeah, so in our campaigns, we included a mix of both our customers or our clients' marketing content, as well as content that we on the publishing side had. There's probably a reason why the consultants are all telling marketers to start thinking like publishers as they get deeper and deeper into content creation and content marketing. As a publication in a trade vertical, one of the things we know how to do very well is create content. And there's a large library because we have a staff of reporters who are creating new content every day that are related to topics in the field. And information in those articles is not sales specific, it's not company specific, it's very well respected, independent. Some of it's research oriented, some of it's information oriented. But part of the programs that we did included purchased reprints of articles that had run that are related to that topic. Now, it was easy for us because this was something we did on the in-house, but I think anybody who is looking to run this type of nurturing campaign would want to take not only their own internally generated marketing content, but also go out and license third-party content, get those article reprints from well-respected trade publications if they have a reprint program available, and blend that with your own material. I think a marketing program that drips, say, product data sheets that are explicitly sales-oriented will not perform as well as something that takes the understanding that the people that have signed up for an educational webinar have only taken one step into that buyer's journey, and they need to understand why this is important to them in their field of work, what the different options they have are, what the who the different providers may be, what are the criteria for making a decision to move forward, to select between vendors, what are the how do you determine what the right criteria are for incorporating into such a decision. So the types of content start out at a educational level on a very broad basis, but are mapped against the buyer's path of what do they need next after they've become aware that this is a problem for their company, their industry. Do they need to understand what options they have? Do they need to understand a little bit more about the type of solutions that might be in place? And it's really thinking about, from the customer's perspective, how are you going to get from not even aware that this is a problem for you to learning about the problem, learning about the solutions, learning about the options, and knowing how to select. So I hope that answers that question.
Hey, I think that maybe we want to get into some of so this is talking about how cutting the number of fields will help increase your response, right,
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah,
and
this
then
next section, and this is kind of exciting because this is where we were able to put that data that we got through our engagement with ReachForce. Once we had that into our system, and we started thinking about how we can use that. I think the thing that got me thinking on this, and this is Marketo research and part of their presentations over time, is they always share a slide on how longer forms hurt conversions. And they came back and did an example of 9 fields, and they did one with 7, and they did 5, and same piece of content, same offer, same text, just a reduction in the number of pieces of information. And as you reduce the number of fields in your registration form, the conversion rate went up. So I got to thinking, theoretically, I just appended all this information that we got from our data cleanse and append service from ReachForce and said, I already have all the information I need to create a valid lead. I've got the name, I've got company, I've got job title, I've got phone, I've got revenue, I've got number of employees, state, all the geography. I really don't need to collect anything else. And with Marketo, and really with any marketing automation, they track behavior. So if somebody clicks on an email, I can tell when somebody does that. So I started to think, can I set up a no field form, basically collecting a lead based on a call to action that doesn't require a registration form at all. And
so this is once you already had collected the data either off an inbound lead form or from the data that you had brought in through enriching your database. That's right?
Right. You have to have the data first. If you don't have the data, you'll register people, but you won't know who they are. But if you have information, then you don't have to ask it again. I think that's the fundamental observation, that if the data is in your database,
the other thing is if you have the data,
ask it.
Yeah, if you have the data, you don't have to ask it in the first place. That's another thing.
Right.
So how did the program work? Let's get into the meat of it, because I know that we're getting close to the top of the hour.
Yeah, the normal registration flow for our programs were to select a target list, send out an email, have a call to action that directed someone to a landing page. The landing page has a form. Somebody filled out the form. In this case is an example for a webinar that we went through. So somebody would go through that normal registration flow, and we measured conversion metrics at each step. How many did we send? How many were opened? How many were clicked? How many people registered based on that? Straightforward stuff, and anyone who's done email marketing probably understands this. The ninja move here was to take this assumption that with marketing automation and good data, I don't need to have a registration form. So the difference from that process is I'm selecting a target list. Now I have to make one qualification of that, and I have to filter out for people in my database where each required field is not empty. So if the email address is empty, I can't use that lead in this program. If I need to have the first name and last name and that information is in my database, those people get excluded. They get a different message that does take them to a form. But for all those records that I had full information, they got an email. It included their name and email in the message, so they already knew that I knew who they were. And I think this was important because people are reluctant to share their information. When you send them an email that demonstrates you already have that information, some of that reluctance breaks down because they don't think they're going to get on another list. They know they're already on one. So we include the name and email in the message. We give them a button for a one-click register for the call to action. And our post-click processing is all done based in our marketing automation program, and it's triggered off of that click. So we've taken one whole step, filling out that registration form, out of the process, so my conversion metrics are a little bit different. I'm still measuring sent, opened, clicked, but the registered are the clicked, because every time someone clicks, that counts as the registration. There's a few things we had to do in our campaign assets in the emails and landing page, and I'll walk through those. Our normal flow, our trigger was they filled out a form, and then the flow was I add them to a registration list, I send them the confirmation email, I get their record into our third-party webinar provider, and so forth. Now, without a form, I can't use filling out the form as a trigger. So now it's if they click on that link, in a particular link in the email, and then I go through that same flow. I add them to a registration list, I send them a confirmation email, and so forth. So the differences in the assets, such as the invitation email, it looks fairly close in terms of the copy as we're walking through this, but the first major difference is, as I mentioned before, I always include, and I use the personalization tokens that exist in the platform. I display the fact that I have their information. And there's two reasons for that. One, and I alluded to this before, I want them to know that we already have a relationship so that they don't have to be reluctant to fill out that form or share that information or register for that webinar. The other is that we know in some cases people are forwarding invitations that they receive to other individuals. And because the actions that we take are based on recognizing a click in a particular email that's sent out, we want to make sure we register the right person. So we're saying that we sent this person this particular message. Then we make a slight difference in the call to actions. So the call to action says confirm me for the webinar, not just register for the webinar. And the reason for this is we want them to know that they're not just going to be taken to another place where they fill out a form like 99% of the other webinar invitations they get. This is something that they're getting directly confirmed.
Steve,
and we also offer.
I think in the next slide you can show them a little bit how this works, because I'm trying to be a little bit of the timekeeper, and this seriously, it's like no, I've never seen anybody else do this, and so I want to make sure we get through the Marketo steps and let people understand the thinking behind it, how to deal with forwards if they go out, things like that. So we've got about 8 minutes.
That's on this next slide here, where we talked about including the name and the email. So on the predecessor slide, we show people's contact information. We say we're confirming them for the webinar. I include that call to action 3 times, and then just below that, I make the comment that if this is not your name or you want to invite a friend or a colleague, here's the link to the direct registration page for that webinar. And this is important, again, because if the recipient of this email wants to invite a colleague or a friend, they can tell someone to go to a particular link. And if the email is forwarded, we want to have a link where somebody can get directly to that registration form so we can still collect that information. But if we have the person's name and email correct, they're going to click that confirm me for the webinar button, and we'll collect the lead and add it to the program at that particular point.
Hey, Steve, let's jump through real quick the slides that take you through the Marketo. So we've got this one and then the next page, and then you're going to start showing some of the Marketo stuff. We are going to send out a PDF of the entire presentation today or tomorrow morning. So you'll have all this and you can follow the steps. So don't feel like you have to furiously write all this down. And there'll be a recording out next week that you can watch on demand, and so you can learn how to do it. But can you take us through a couple more? Because I'm still stuck on your Ninja Move one-click registration flow. If you are going through,
I have been
So,
going through, so I'm at the results page.
okay. I would keep
And
going
I'll,
based on what we set up earlier, probably getting to about slide 25 on your end, maybe 24. Um, I cannot tell you
yeah,
how exciting it is every time we do a presentation here to find out what technical glitch is going to happen that time. So I'm hoping, so I'm seeing Ninja Move one-click registration flow on my screen. Um, I'm sure our friends out there will tell us if they're seeing the same thing.
so I have tried to refresh it as well. So I've got the results slide, the introduction to the results, and I'll quickly verbally summarize this. But I have 3 comparisons on programs using this one-click and programs with a normal registration flow. The first is for an infographic, or what we call the data poster. Um, and we did a comparable A/B test on this, similar size audiences. The interesting thing here is that the number of people that clicked on the email is about the same, very close numbers.
Yeah, it's really
But
weird. I don't know why we keep having all these problems. We're seeing a black screen out there in black screen land. And yes, we are going to we're going to provide a PDF of the presentation so you can read through it, and you will be able to watch a video recording of the show. So this is one of those like mean tricks, like this is the part where we reveal the murderer or something in a big show, like, and suddenly you lose your cable or something. Which is why we edit our video recordings to cover up all of these errors. So I'm going to see here. The only problem on my end is every time I try to show something, it ends up looking weird, but we're going to give it a shot. I'm going to make myself the presenter so that we can see what Steve is trying to show the rest of us.
I think I have to.
Yeah, this is super annoying. I have so apologize. It's never anything we actually are doing. It's just an exciting thing that gets to happen to us. So let me just go in here. There we go. Okay. I'm going to make me the presenter. This should be pretty exciting. And probably see a whole bunch of stuff that isn't what I mean to show you, but I'm going to try. So let me make this full screen. Sorry for the midstream mess up. Okay, so are we seeing asset differences 1 tokens? Shoot, sorry guys. This is the problem with trying to drive your own presentation. So I'm going to go back here, hopefully. Okay, so this is the Marketo stuff, Steve, and I'm going to put it up on screen because you did actually, oh my gosh, I'm like so not loving all of this problem. Okay, so is anybody, can you just shoot through the questions if you're seeing Ninja Move program flow differences? And now I'm switching it to changes to my invitation. Yay, all right, thank you. This is gonna be one of my worst recordings ever. Okay, so Steve, yeah, if you wanna pull up the slides on your end, we've got the lead first name, etc., and just start walking through and then say.
I talked through that. I
okay.
Just assumed because I saw it that it was making it through to everyone else. So
Steve, this is a webinar. Don't assume it's going well. Okay, so we're seeing the reasons why, because everybody was asking all these questions that you were so carefully like documenting. See how great his slides are, you guys? So he's showing that he has the information. He already has a relationship, and the link will register because I know where we sort of left off with the rest of the team.
So the Ninja Move changes to the invitation. We talked about the
call to action we're looking at right now.
Call to action. So the next slide, asset differences 1, tokens to display recipient. This is where I'm calling the knowledge of the individual and placing that into the email.
Right.
And all marketing automation programs have a way to personalize. And again, the importance of making sure that you have this in there is twofold. 1, to show that you have that information, which encourages people to share and go ahead and register. And then the second is that we have an issue if somebody forwards this email or they want to invite a colleague to either download or to attend the webinar. This is a customized, personalized email for the person we're sending it to. We need to have an alternate path.
Oh, yeah, because otherwise you're going to have cookies going to the wrong people in your whole database.
Right.
Yeah. That's
so
super clever.
We share first, this is for this one person. The next is the asset differences on the call to action. Implies a personalized registration. So this is confirm me for the webinar. It doesn't say click here to register or click here to download. We're indicating that this is for confirmation.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay,
the
so we're
person
gonna,
listed above.
yeah.
And then the next slide
and the results
shows what we do for those individuals who want to invite a third party.
Okay, so I've jumped to your results screen, the comparison of the data poster download. You want to just talk through this one, because this is really interesting.
I'll walk through these quickly because I think it shows that there is value in taking the time to implement this type of campaign, especially for different types of assets. And I used 3 different. I used data poster, or what that's our term for an infographic. The data poster download, we saw a nearly 10-fold improvement in the number of downloads. And you can see the number of registrations. We did an A/B test with about 10,000 people in each. The interesting thing is the number of opens and clicks were about the same, but once people hit that registration page for an infographic, they gave up. So if I could capture a lead simply by opening the infographic for them after they click, we saw a tremendous improvement in the number of downloads compared to the number that we sent.
So Steve, quick question on the normal registration. Were you pre-populating the fields, which is an option in Marketo, or were you leaving it unfilled on your normal registration process?
We were pre-populating on the field.
Huh, that's weird. I would have thought with that low of a number that people were like, just, I don't know, like they just didn't want to fill out the form.
Which I'm kind of jumping ahead to, but the conclusion is people think they should get an infographic without having to register. That's just one of those assets that people aren't going to share information in order to get.
Okay, so the next...
If we jump to the white paper comparison, and the numbers on my tests are a little bit different because I'd already been running before I implemented this program. So the percentages are more important. But we saw on both the normal, both open and click-through, there's a smaller percentage that actually clicked the one-click white paper offer, but the improvement drops through on the number of downloads, because once somebody clicks that link, that counted as a white paper download, and we didn't have to collect any more information. So that was a lead that presented itself to that particular campaign. The normal registration, we only included the number that actually filled out the form and downloaded.
Right.
So we wound up with about 1.5 times the baseline result.
Right. And just quickly on this slide with the white paper offer, obviously you had a much bigger send to start your campaign. Right. So don't look at the raw numbers at the bottom, because you're going to, I would almost normalize that number to a 5,000 base, just divide it to get there. But the next one, someone's asking this question, and I think that we all are wondering, like, well, if you make it so simple, you remove so much friction from the white paper, you remove so much friction from an infographic request. Do you see the engagement isn't really legit? Or like when you use the one-click webinar result, which we're showing here on screen now, did you see fewer people actually attend because they really weren't that committed to coming in?
No, we saw about the same number on the webinar registration. The white paper is a little bit harder to tell the post-click engagement level. The webinar registration has was consistent in terms of the number that actually attended.
Right.
We see a much bigger variation based on time of registration than format of registration. For example, if we register someone 4 weeks in advance, that's going to have the lowest actual attendance rate. People sign up with good intentions, and a lot happens in a month, so they're no longer in a position to attend. Those that sign up 2 days, 3 days before, we see a much higher rate than in our numbers. It's typically 30% on the very early and 60% of those that are in the last week.
So Steve,
our numbers have been consistent.
I have to tell you right now that you're going to be writing a blog post about this for us, because this is fantastic. There's so many levels of I know that I've been hearing from a lot of people and some vendors that we work with that, webinar registrations have been way down. They've been like much less than projected originally, and attendance hasn't always been super. And so this is really, really interesting because I think that a lot of us feel like we have to start our campaign 4 weeks ahead of time, and then we have to do, you can only mail X number of times. And when we talked, I think it was a couple of days ago, you were telling me that you are typically not even starting until 3 weeks, and you're continuing to hit people repeatedly, and just because sometimes people just don't bite at that time or they don't know their schedule. So I think that's all the pieces of how you can max out your webinar results is something that would be a great piece for the marketing community to get to review with you. I'm going to click ahead to the end here. So the challenges with the Ninja moves were the forwarded email, and you cover that in here. JavaScript disabled can cause a problem. And then the watch attendance. So you didn't see a decline in live attendance, is what you're saying
No,
here?
no. We the percentages were consistent. Yeah, and we anticipated that when we did this, we'd get more people register, but fewer actually attend, and that wasn't the. We were pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah.
We were able to boost the registration number, and a similar percentage still attended. So
I think it's
that's
kind of like
something that we do.
yeah, I had to fill out a bunch of forms for my kids' school today, and I find it so aggravating. If anybody has children, you have to do this like for camp, and it literally feels like you're filling out the same information 3 or 4 times, right? Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. And it's just so aggravating. It's like, how many times do you need to break down the doctor's name and phone number, and what date the shot was? It's just stuff like that. And this is like, we want it to be easy for people to come in. I think that if we're trying to get someone to do something for us and it's in a marketing environment, we should make it as easy as possible. And I think that the great thing that I love about both the research and the methodology behind this, which is why you probably won an award, is that it's very thoughtful around a lot of these issues, and also the engagement piece, because a lot of people can boost their numbers with a sexy offer, like, oh, I'm going to give you $100 if you come to my webinar. Well, I'll come to your webinar for $100, but I'm probably not going to buy your $2 million insurance package because I'm not the right person. So you've got to balance out these incentives to get people to do things versus getting the right people there and converting in the way that we need them to. So I think that there's a great piece of learning around that for us who are trying to drive better program results. And I think that we'll cover some of the details a bit more after we are a little bit over on time, so I want to make sure we get to the end. So I'm on your Ninja Learning slide, the difference in willingness to share information. Can you just cover that real quickly?
Yeah, and there's a couple things, and we've hinted at this. What this program gave us a great handle on is the willingness to share information for different types of content. So while the goal was to increase registrations, what we learned was that our registration for a infographic, for example, people just won't fill out a form to get that. They don't want to. We further tested this on video. People won't fill out a form to watch a video. They think they ought to get it without a gate. So the learning that we took from this is, if we have an infographic or we have a video, we're not going to run a lead generation campaign behind a registration form. We're going to do everything we can to use this type of one-click registration. We're still going to track, and we're still going to gather the information on the person that's watching, and that goes into our overall marketing automation platform. We're collecting that data, but we're not going to gate with a form videos or infographics. Meanwhile, there's still a high willingness to share information on white papers and webinars, but we can improve the registration rate if we already have that information. So there it becomes a balance. If we have a list and some of our data we have complete records and some of our data we don't, we're going to go ahead and send the people that we already know a formless registration, and the people that we don't know will get a registration link that takes them to a traditional landing page with a registration form where we get that information. It just won't work if you don't have some sort of marketing automation platform in place. So that's where the benefit of having a tool like Marketo comes into play. We have it in place. We've got the data in there. We understand how to create landing pages and forms and track clicks. And having that knowledge, now we can do the fun stuff like set up those one-click forms and personalized emails. And the other element of this is that you've got to have good data quality in order to execute this, because you are registering people for a webinar that you would ordinarily use to collect and refine your registration data. Well, you're bypassing that step now. So you're assuming that the information you have is good and correct. And by having good and correct information, you're getting better. You're able to take that next step. Somebody attends the webinar, you can have your inside sales team follow up, or you can enter them into the drip nurturing campaign. So good data quality is essential. We didn't start this until after we had engaged ReachForce to help us get that data quality improved. And once we did, this program made a lot of sense and delivered the results.
I think that this is, I find that every time I sit and talk with Steve, I almost need a little place that I'm writing down all the things I need to remember, go check that I'm doing, because there's so many things here that he did that we could put into place regardless of how complete our records are. For example, I actually, Steve, like I said, he shared it with me first because he's really nice, and I sent him brisket from Texas. So that's our relationship. But he told me how to do it, and I didn't pay enough attention to the details. So it's really critical that you focus on this one thing, and I'll leave all this chatter in the recording to come back to, but make sure that part of your program flow steps is ensuring that the first name is not blank, last name is not blank, company name is not blank. If you are planning to display that as part of this one-click registration, if it's blank, your default value is going to show up, and you better make sure your default value is blank, or you're going to show them at the wrong company. And if you're dealing with people who are replacing other people, I mean, just think about all those delivered emails that are going to the person who inherited the old email address of the previous person in their job. You can have issues there. So, you have to think through that. And that's what Steve did really successfully here. Because again, if email isn't populated, well, obviously you're not going to send it at all. But having that as part of your flow, and then once you have a program like this, Steve, can you just sort of clone your program and then just repeat it once you have it at this like fine level of like sort of the perfected version after you've baked in all of the learning about how to make it work?
Yeah, the hardest part is getting the first one. After you do the first one, it becomes very easy to replicate, because the program flow, the philosophy is the same. The things you're changing out are images and copy that describes the download or the registration that you're trying to collect.
Right.
And you write that once, and you'd have to write that for a different webinar, a different white paper anyway.
Right.
So from the flow perspective, the personalization is consistent from message to message. I'm just creating a different message and then going in the back end and saying, trigger off of clicking that particular link in that particular email and adding them to the registration list for that webinar, adding them to the download list for the white paper.
I still have a ton of people here, so you guys are we're going to keep chatting. If you have questions, please shoot them here. And Steve, how much time do you have to answer some questions? We are over time.
I have time.
Okay, awesome. So if you want to send some questions, just shoot them over to me, and I will read them out to Steve, and we'll see what we can all learn about this. But the thing that I think that that Steve really brings home in this is that when you're doing these programs in marketing automation, the world is your oyster, depending on the capabilities of your system. But you need to think through what consequences you're going to have. Because I sent out an email, probably actually to many of you received an email from me that it's misspelled pencil. I mean, like seriously, spell check, right? But that's a really glaring mistake, but it's the program flow stuff that you really need to focus on. So kind of gut checking that, well, what if this is blank, or what if this is blank? And maybe it's the job title is blank. Maybe that's part of how you're going to target or how you want to get things going. So I'm just going back here in my control panel because I'm seeing.
I'll extend on that in terms of the testing process for things like this. One of the things that's important is to create an internal group, and I had a group of 4 or 5 people, and I had 4 or 5 different email personas for myself, different email clients. And before I would send my campaign to my target list, I sent it to the test list. And I didn't send it as a test. I sent it as if it were a real life campaign outside through our normal email delivery, and checked every link to make sure that every action from a customer perspective did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
A lot of the marketing automation gives you the ability to do something called a test or a sample email, but that's not the live public environment. It takes a little bit longer to set up, but I always send it to this small internal group as a real live outside message and ask them to execute on it. Because as much as I look at it, just like you, one person is going to miss something because they've been working on the campaign. 4 or 5 people that walk through, that register, that get the response materials, that see landing pages, have to download the white paper. So always test.
Right. That's actually a really good point. And someone just raised your hand, and I accidentally eliminated your raised hand. So please raise your hand again. And actually, the easiest thing is to send questions through the questions portal if you're at your computer, because I can see those really easily in front of me. So the point that you just made about the test audience is really important. From old school direct marketing, we always try to include seed names with our outbound emails, and that's important. But I think testing something live is critical. And there's another thing that you can gain from doing that, and it's you're able to actually see what server sent your email. So if you're having issues with email deliverability, you can find out, make sure that there wasn't some hiccup with the email server that you're on. I did also, Steve, just get a question. Is the last email of your drip campaign in this program that you're covering a sales letter or another free download? And how do you end it for the most sales? Or I'll add my own ending of that question is, do you hand off when you get them to a level of MQL for sales to take over the qualification process?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I guess the 2 parts, the first, there's kind of a 2-part answer. So in the normal drip, the last email is typically a thank you that's explicitly around the sponsor's campaign. So the informational assets that are dripped over time, the message is a little bit lighter. It's something like, because you expressed interest in this topic by registering for this webinar or attending this event, we thought you might be interested in this, courtesy of our sponsor. And then the last message is, we hope you've enjoyed the campaign elements. If you missed anything, here's the links to everything that you might have downloaded over the last 3 months or 2 months, however long the campaign lasted. Mm-hmm. And then we invite you to learn more from the sponsor by clicking here. So there's a defined end, but we always make it clear that it's sponsored throughout the course of the campaign.
Right.
And if somebody wants to follow up, they have an opportunity to click the sponsor link in any of the drip messages too.
And that's kind of an artificial end because you're actually doing marketing as a service in the campaigns that you're describing. Whereas in our own world, we would just keep nurturing them until we finally got them to bubble up to someone of interest, right?
Right. And in our environment, that led to the sales process for the next campaign, that we said, look, we've got these, they haven't been qualified yet. We'd love to continue to work them. We think there's people here that just aren't ready. A repeat campaign, we'll start with these incorporated into it.
Right.
So the next kickoff webinar becomes another nurturing asset for the people that didn't respond to the previous campaign.
Right. I think that we could probably go on like this forever. I have one question here, which is, do you use drip campaigns for upsell after you've already converted a prospect, or do you leave it to the sales guy? I'm going to jump in because of what I just said about the fact that at Crane, they're doing this as a service for their clients. I think that, as you're building out your marketing campaign programs, and something I wanted to say earlier, which I think is really important to kind of reassure those of us who don't have programs that are as awesome as Steve's yet. Most marketing people are using their very expensive, very capable marketing automation systems. 50% use it strictly as an email blast tool. They haven't tied it to programs, lead scoring, all this super cool stuff. But I know somebody who's really, one of the clients that works with ReachForce has 60 weeks of nurture in 4 different persona tracks. And that's just for the beginning of the funnel, nurturing to sales ready. Then post sale, you do want to try to think about that and make sure that your data is configured appropriately, because you don't want to lose contact with people that are in the sales pipeline, but you have to figure out what your breaks are, like where do you need to stop talking to them with certain marketing assets when they're in the pipeline, when there's an opportunity open in Salesforce, for example, or whatever your CRM connector is? Or, I also know of companies that take sort of a do no harm approach. Just keep marketing out, being interesting, sending assets of value to the people that are in their prospect audience persistently, so that there's, it's like getting a letter from a friend who's really, really good about staying in contact. You never get them out of your mind. So when you're in the point of needing a solution, of course you're going to think of the company that's been sending you those really great emails that are relevant to you. And the company, you can monitor whether or not you're relevant by the engagement that that user is showing. And if they, engage quickly, then obviously sales can jump in. Everyone does it differently, but that would be kind of my response to that. Do you keep doing drip campaigns, or the sales guy? It's probably a combination of both things. And I don't see any other questions, and we have gone super long. And your patience, I hope to reward you very soon with a copy of the PDF for the program. And I want to thank Steve for being so incredibly generous with me, with his time, and teaching this to me, teaching this to other people I know in the past, and agreeing to do this webinar strictly because he wanted to share all of this. We will be doing some follow-up on our blog and in webinar recording, which obviously is going to need some really interesting editing. I think I have a weekend set aside for this one. If you do have questions, the email address that I sent you before, you write me, it's hello@reachforce.com. If you have questions you would like to have addressed in a blog post of any nature or specifically related to this, just send them along, and we will get that together so that we can continue to share on this topic. And I'm sure that we will have more of these types of things in the future, so we will keep you posted the next time it happens. So thank you, Steve Susina, and congratulations on your new gig. And thank you to everybody who took the time to attend. So that's it for today, and have a great rest of your afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. Bye-bye.